So we're here taking a look at the 7.0.3 Elemental Shaman, and you'll see that I've got the talents sitting up here. And one of the things that I want to end up talking about is how these talents will end up fluctuating. Now, on the level 15, you'll notice I have Earthen Rage, and the reason for this is on single target, it does a very solid amount of damage. Totem Mastery is also very good, but the thing with Totem Mastery is you have to maintain casting. So if you have any little bit of movement, Earthen Rage is actually going to take over. Path of Flame, on the other hand, is not very good at all. In the 30, Gust of Wind's great for mobility. Ancestral Guidance, it's been nerfed very badly, but at the same time, it's still a good pick-me-up. If you see someone getting ready to die, you can cast it, and it still acts as a smart heal, even though it only heals 3 different people. Windrush Totem's also a great cooldown if you're needing it, like a Stampeding Roar or something. But right now, in a lot of the stuff in 7.0.3, it's not that necessary for the additional speed boost. Level 45 talents, Lightning Surge Totem usually beats out everything because most of the stuff is not going to be affected very well by a Voodoo Totem or Earth Grab Totem, but that direct stun is almost a reset on everything. Level 60 talents, Elemental Blast. Very first one up there. Now, it's definitely taken a weaker turn since the beta, and I think a lot of that is due to gear. In lower gear levels, Elemental Blast will more than likely end up taking over, and you'll see it becoming a bit more dominant. But the amount of stats that it offers right now, at the point of where our stats are extremely high, is just not good enough. You're seeing too many diminishing returns out of it. Ancestral Swiftness, on the other hand, is just a flat 10% haste increase, and it's absolutely the top choice in this tier. Then you have Echo of Elements, which is also very nice, being able to pool up the additional Lava Surge, and you don't lose the extra Lava Surge proc if it does happen twice, if you're in a multi-dot situation. Level 75, Elemental Fusion. They did have this to where it was working very well, and since have nerfed it into the ground. For 7.0.3, it may make a return. We're still working on a little bit of tweaks here or there, so we'll see how that plays out. Primal Elementalist is currently the top, and what you're looking at with Primal Elementalist is the fact that this is going to give you something to end up adding into all your different bursts, your ring, your pre-pots, your lust. All this different stuff will actually end up helping during this time with Primal Elementalist, and it makes an insane amount of burst damage for that 1 minute that you get to use it, but it is on a 5-minute cooldown. Ice Fury also works very well, but it's a lot better if you need to focus a nuke target. You can end up casting it and then throwing out some really supercharged Frost Shocks in the process. Level 90, Elemental Mastery. This just takes the cake out of the whole row, and the reason for it is the haste is very solid for us right now. You want a lot of haste. The faster you're casting, the more haste you end up having. The faster your Flame Shock ticks are going to be, the more Lava Surge procs you're going to get, and it's going to fill out very, very well. And then you've got the Storm Elemental, which takes place of your Fire Elemental, and it's not worth it. It does not end up doing enough additional damage to beat out Elemental Mastery on its 2-minute cooldown. And Aftershock seems okay, but right now, with the higher haste and everything, you're getting all these additional procs. Maelstrom's really not a problem to end up generating up. So I don't see a very solid point in Aftershock. Level 100, Ascendance. Ascendance is still a very dominant cooldown, and it does a ton of damage. It's very close with what Lightning Rod is. Now, Lightning Rod takes it just by a little tiny bit, and the reason for that is if you have even one single ad come in during the Lightning Rod, it ends up helping out quite a bit on the additional explosion damage. If you get the proc, it is proc dependent, but the other thing is it promotes you to use Lightning Bolt, and if you've got the 4 set tier 18 for Elemental Shamans, every 10 Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightnings cast is going to give you your haste buff now instead of how many Maelstroms you end up using. It plays well into the full rotation of the tier sets. If you don't have the tier sets, Ascendance may end up being the better choice. And then Liquid Magma Totem obviously is going to be great on an AoE situation, and even on a single target situation, it doesn't end up doing much less than the other two. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about rotation and the passives. So before we get into stat priorities and general rotation, What you're looking at is a couple passives. We need to go over the passives and how this thing's actually changed here. And the first thing we're going to go over is a mastery. Elemental Overload. It's reverted back to pre-Warlords of Draenor mastery. So instead of it doing what Warlords did, to where it did those little missile fires, that's actually been moved to a talent. And this is now reverted back to a multi-strike situation, where your Lightning Bolt, Elemental Blast, Ice Fury, Chain Lightning, and Lava Burst all have an X amount of chance to trigger a second cast on the same target for 75% of normal damage and Maelstrom generation. This is going to help you promote a lot of additional damage and Maelstrom single target. With our next one, we're going to actually talk a little bit on the crit side of things with Elemental Fury. Your damaging critical strikes deal 250% damage instead of the usual 200%. One of the things I have a lot of people ask me is, well, why don't we have baseline what it does with Warlocks? Well, this is a lot of the reason why. The Destruction Warlock in their Chaos Bolt has that critical strike modifier that increases its damage overall. We just get a flat on all our spells if we crit of an additional 50% damage on them. So this does give crit a base priority, but I don't believe it's going to take top priority. This is basically going to have diminishing returns built into it over Lava Burst, just for the simple fact that when you stack a bunch of crit, you've got an automatic crit generator coming off of Lava Burst to begin with, and then your other abilities aren't going to end up having a good enough chance unless you build an insane amount of crit. The next passive we are going to cover is going to be Lava Surge. Not a lot has changed with this. Basically, this is going to work the same, to where your Flame Shock is going to end up doing its damage over time and having a 10% chance each time it does to reset the remaining cooldown on Lava Burst and cause your next Lava Burst to be instant. These procs are what you're looking for, and with Flame Shock working with haste, it does still end up reducing the time between each tick. You can end up having it to where it ticks X amount of, I ended up taking off all my gear and it was like 2 seconds between each tick, and with all my gear on it was every 1.4 seconds. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you get a couple of these rolling, you'll really end up seeing a bunch of Lava Burst procs coming through from Lava Surge. And the last one we're going to do is Elemental Focus. Elemental Focus is a very solid piece that also ties greatly into crit. Your direct damage spell critical strikes increase the damage and healing of your next 2 spells by 10%. This is going to help out a lot in overall damage, and you can manipulate this very well if you know how to end up keeping a good track, or you have a decent weak aura set up to follow these procs. Let's go ahead and move on to the actual rotation. So the current 7.0.3 rotation or abilities are going to base around what you see up here. Now that, keep in mind, that's not going to include Ice Fury or Frost Shock, for the simple fact that I don't have those set up on here and I didn't want to add them in. But if you wanted to complicate it a bit, it does do great, like mentioned before, as a talent to end up improving some burst window damage every 30 seconds. But currently, from the spec that I showed you before, this is going to be the general priority list for it. Now, if you did end up deciding to take the totems, I did mark those in there. Dropping your totems is going to be the very first thing that you're going to want to end up doing, and make sure that they get put down again before they fall off every 2 minutes. The other thing you're going to want to do is Flame Shock as many targets as possible, up to about 4. Any more than that and you're going to have issues trying to keep them up. But if you have Gul'dan's Trinket, Flame Shock is doing a ton of damage right now, and it will more than likely be your top damage in most situations, just because of how much it can do. Earth Shock is going to be third in the list here, and you're going to want to use it normally with 80 plus Maelstrom. Now a lot of people are like, well, why 80 plus? That's where you're going to get your damage at the most, and if you end up doing it any less than 80, when you go to cast a Lava Burst, if you do multi-strike with it, it's going to cap you out at 80 plus. So it's a wax or wane, and the other time you want to use Earth Shock is try and use it whenever you have your Elemental Focus proc to get that additional 10%, because it does hit very, very hard. Lava Burst, you obviously want to keep it on cooldown. That way, whenever you do end up getting Lava Surge procs, it's not wasted. Lightning Bolt, is just going to be your general filler in a single target, and I mean one target only situation. Outside of one target, 2+ targets, you're going to want to use Chain Lightning. As for, it's the same cast time, and it does a little bit more damage on 2 different targets and builds the same Maelstrom. On 3 targets, it's a guaranteed gain all the way through and through on Maelstrom generation and damage. Earthquake Totem, it actually will replace the damage of Earthshock on 3+ targets with how much it's been doing. So you really want to try and keep that down, and you can keep multiple Earthquakes down at the same time. And then you have your Fire Elemental as your cooldown. This is your general cooldown. You may have Ascendance if you talented for it, but Fire Elemental is going to be your generalized cooldown. It is a 5-minute cooldown, and you're going to want to use it during your Lust, Pot, and Burn phases. Let's get into a little bit of the stats. So, with the stats, I have a different setup than what the simulators are saying. The Sim Standstill, Intel Crit, Haste, Versatility, Mastery works great if you're just standing there shooting a target dummy. The second you gotta end up moving though, your damage plummets. Testing the simulated stats in a live environment was brutal, because having to move really plummeted everything. Now in the live testing, what I found worked the best was going to be Intel, Haste, Mastery, which has a slight edge over Crit, and then Versatility. The main reason for this is because Haste is not only going to help you by allowing you to cast your spells a little bit faster and less downtime if you do have to interrupt a spell to move, but it's also going to end up helping you out with your procs of Lava Surge. It does reduce Flame Shock's tick time, or time between ticks, and it helps out with those promotions of additional damage. Mastery is just going to be there. If you end up getting the additional hits, you're also looking at more damage, and you're also looking at more Maelstrom generation. With the addition of the Maelstrom generation on there, Mastery felt really damn strong. Obviously, Crit is going to be good due to your Elemental Fury, your Elemental Focus. Both of those are going to be really strong in helping boost your damage, but most of the time you're going to have that general Crit already that you're going to be able to benefit from your procs, from Lava Surge. That's going to end up helping you maintain those crits and actually keep that flowing no matter what. So if you've got a good way of timing it, you can always end up throwing it out there, and if you know that you've got an Earthshock that's ready to come off, obviously it's going to take a little bit more mental work than just simply stand back and pew pew and hit buttons. But it's not that hard to end up maintaining. All in all, this is going to be the conclusion for this real quick guide on the Elemental Shaman. I hope you guys like it. I hope it helps you out in the 7.0.3, and we'll try and do an updated one as soon as we end up getting into Legion and start getting into some max stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed yourself, and thanks for watching.